Hey, he's Kevin Kaufman. I'm Fred Weaver, and this is Industry Headlines. We are live inside our Next Level Agents Facebook group. Also, of course, recording this for the Kevin and Fred show. So, Kevin, lots to talk about in the last week or so here in the real estate and mortgage industry as far as news goes.
Yeah, no doubt about it, right? We've got quite a few stories to get to in this week's headlines. So let's talk about those. We're going to talk about forbearance again, because what would industry headlines be without talking about forbearance in the current mortgage market state? We'll talk about more forbearance in equity positions. Talk about Zillow Offers resuming and kind of even ramping up, if you will, that resumption. Judge allowing some interesting things, and with Realogy, excuse me, and the Compass lawsuit, as well as Realogy looking to raise some more capital. So let's hit it, man. Where do you want to start first today?
Yeah, well, I'll lump the forbearance stories all into one because I don't want to spend too much time here. But depending upon who you ask, forbearances are either slightly on the rise or slightly on the decline. The Mortgage Bankers Association came out and said there was a slight increase at the end of May. Black Knight has come out and said that as of the first week of June, there's a slight decrease. I'm going to go with Black Knight. I think their data is a little bit more recent. They also are giving a bigger number as far as people that have been in forbearance. So I think there's a more comprehensive accounting going on. But either way, the forbearance thing is slowing down for sure, if not starting to decrease. And some interesting news relative to forbearance is that Black Knight went in and took a look at the equity position of people that are in forbearance. So roughly 4 to 5 million people, again, depending upon who you want to listen to, Kevin, MBA or Black Knight, are in forbearance right now. What is their equity position like? That's an interesting question, an interesting thing to take a look at.
Yeah, so with only 1 in 10, according to Black Knight, only 1 in 10 borrowers are that are in forbearance are considered equity poor, right? You and I have talked about equity rich here on the show a few times in the last 6 months, meaning that only 10% of the folks who are in forbearance are actually underwater, meaning their home is worth less than what the current market value is. Now, to me, why that's important is because still to this day, I saw something yesterday on Facebook from a real estate agent asking about, hey, what's going to happen when this is all over? We're going to have a lot of short sales and foreclosures. And to me, this is just another indication, and you and I have talked about this a few times now, that we're probably not. It's not to say that we won't have some, but if anything, this tells me we might have some short sales, probably not many foreclosures, but really not that many of any, because we've got a lot of folks who are in an equity position, which gives them more options. Again, go back, 10, 12 years. It wasn't just that people couldn't afford their payments. It's that the home was no longer worth what they owed on it, right? And that means they couldn't sell it and make a quick buck or just get out from under it very easily. Where in this case, someone who, for the most part, if they're in forbearance and they're still hurting 3 months from now, 9 out of 10 of those people have equity and can actually just sell and walk away.
Yeah, I mean, here's your headline. 80% of the people in forbearance, so, 4 million out of the 5 million or 3+ million out of the 4+ million, they've got 20% or more equity. So unless you see your market going backwards in a big way, a couple mortgage payments is not going to eat into a 20% equity position. They're going to be able to sell with cash in their pocket. They're going to have a lot of options at the end. So as you said, 10% of them have less than 10% equity, and only 1% of them are actually even underwater. So it's some interesting stuff. So anyway, there's your forbearance news for the week. Moving on, Zillow Offers. Unless you want to add something in there, Kevin.
No. Let's move on for sure.
You're like, please stop talking about
I've said the word
forbearances.
forbearance more than enough times in the last 90 days that I'm good for at least a couple more years.
All right. Well, Zillow Offers, this is a recap for you, but on May 18th, they resumed iBuying in Phoenix and Tucson, Arizona, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina. On May 27th, they resumed their iBuying in Portland, Oregon, Nashville, Tennessee, Denver, Fort Collins, in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I think some more news just came out in the last 24 or 48 hours. So what's that news, Kevin?
So starting today's Tuesday, June 9th, at the time that we're recording this, and they are resuming in Atlanta, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, and San Diego, and Sacramento. So 6 more markets that Zillow has turned the green light back on, if you will, to resume iBuying under the Zillow Offers brand.
Yeah, they're now back open for business in more places than are closed down, would be sort of the summary of that, I think, because I think they're in 24 total markets. There's north of 12 that they're back buying in. And they're saying that their traffic in their listings right now is up 51% from a year ago. Now, a disclaimer on that first particular statistic, I have no idea if that's just because they're in more markets. I have no idea if that's like a specific market that they're referring to, but at the end of the day, they're putting out the news that there's more traffic in their listings than there was even a year ago.
So last week on Inman Connect, now I watched the interview with Rich Barton, the CEO and co-founder, and he mentioned, how much traffic they'd had, like website traffic they'd had, period, and how those were all indicators for this. And so I'm assuming that that's more like on everything, not just actually their owned properties. I could be wrong about that. And Brad asked him like, hey, is that because people are sitting at home, they're on the computer more? And I think his answer might have been a little rosy, but at the same time, I mean, yeah, you and I can see it in the markets that we're in, and some of the agents that we talk to, that demand is high right now, and so that doesn't surprise me to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of demand, or maybe demands, there's a lawsuit out there right now between Realogy and Compass. Realogy filed a lawsuit against Compass. We've covered it here on industry headlines in the past, and the headline, for the week, if you will, is that a New York State Supreme Court judge has allowed this lawsuit to continue, right? So there was some motions to dismiss from Compass's end. Compass has tried to settle through arbitration, apparently. The thing that I kind of learned in the headlines in the last week, Kevin, is it sounds like this particular lawsuit might be being birthed from the Corcoran brand that Realogy owns. Like, that's never really been publicized before, but it sounds like maybe the big dispute, if you will, between Realogy and Compass is actually a dispute coming out of the Corcoran brand. So for whatever it's worth, that's what I've picked up in the last week.
Yeah, so judge is going to allow that lawsuit to continue, which means they've got cause. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but it means that they've got a good argument, and be interesting to see what happens with Compass there, should Realogy win that lawsuit. I'm sure we're a long ways away from finding out. Also, Realogy in the news now, looking to raise $400 million in additional capital. Now that number $400 million sticks out because Realogy had a deal earlier this year to sell its relocation arm, Cardis Services. Many agents are members or work with Cardis. They're an agent at Cardis, and for their relocation business. And Realogy has owned that for some time, and they had a deal to sell it for $400 million. So interesting, that deal got canceled on, and that was, controversial. I think there was some stuff going on where Realogy felt like the buyer backed out without good intentions.
That's actually, and just so you know, Kevin, that's actually still going on. There's an active lawsuit between Realogy and Sirva, SIRVA, which is another relocation company, if you will, that was part of that deal. It was buying it. So that deal is in limbo.
Yeah, so Realogy is looking to raise $400 million, which is the same number they had a deal to sell for. So that'd be interesting. I'm curious what they're going to do. I don't know if that's going to be to restructure debt or if they've got some growth plans with that, but be interesting to see. I notice our stock has been doing a little bit better, and who knows what's on the forefront for them. I'm sure they'll have something up their sleeves for sure.
Yeah, so lots going on in the real estate and mortgage industry. Thanks for joining us for Industry Headlines. Leave a comment if you're watching this live on Next Level Agents or recording. We'd love to get your thoughts on what's going on, maybe what you're hearing and seeing in your market relative to Forbearances or Zillow Offers. And if you're listening to our podcast, thanks for tuning in. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Talk to you guys soon.
Oh! Hey, it's Kevin and Fred. Do you have a referral for us here in Phoenix? There are 30,000 agents here that you could send them to. Why us? Well, for one thing, we'll keep you updated and you'll never have to track down your commission.
We'll also make you look really good to your client. And best of all, it helps us keep all this content free. So go to kevinandfred.com/referral to make the introduction. We'll take great care of them.